Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something it's quietly changing one of our most important institutions. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. It's not just sci-fi anymore. It's actually being used right now in courtrooms, in police departments. So let's kind of crack open that black box and really see what's going on inside.
I mean, think about it for a second. Could an algorithm actually decide your fate? It sounds kind of crazy, but it's getting more real every single day. We're talking about AI predicting crime, even influencing prison sentences. And it really makes you wonder, right? Are these systems making justice better? Or are they just taking our worst human biases and baking them into some high-tech, unexplainable code?
Okay, so you might be asking, why? Why this big rush to shove AI into the justice system in the first place? Well, the motivation behind it is actually pretty powerful. It all starts with this big promise, a promise of a smarter, faster, and maybe even a fairer system. And when you look at the reasons on paper, they're super compelling. Our justice systems, they're often completely overwhelmed. They don't have enough funding. So AI comes along and promises to help police send officers where they're needed most, to cut through mountains of paperwork. And maybe the biggest promise of all is this dream of pure data-driven objectivity, making decisions based on cold, hard numbers instead of, just a judge's gut feeling. So to really get to the heart of this, we've got to talk about something called a recidivism risk assessment. This is one of the most common ways AI is used in courts. Basically, it's a tool that takes a bunch of data about a person, crunches the numbers, and spits out a score. And that score is a prediction. How likely is this person to commit another crime? Now think about that. That one single number can influence whether someone gets out on bail or even how long their prison sentence is. And believe me, this risk assessment stuff, it's just one piece of the puzzle. This technology is already out there, on the streets, and in the courts, every single day. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in practice. Okay, so out on the street, you've got police departments using AI to forecast what they call crime hotspots. The whole idea is to deploy officers to these high-risk areas before a crime even happens. And then you have automated facial recognition. The tech that scans millions of faces from security cameras, from social media, all to try and find a match for a suspect in a crowd. Back in the courtroom, those recidivism scores we just talked about, they're literally being handed to judges and parole boards, and they're directly influencing these huge decisions about who stays locked up and who gets to walk free. And for investigators, AI can be an incredibly powerful tool. It can sift through just mountains of forensic data. We're talking DNA, fingerprints, digital evidence, at a speed that, let's be honest, no human team could ever hope to match. So, okay, we have this promise of efficiency, of objectivity. It sounds great, but in practice, these systems have started to show some really deep, really disturbing flaws. Let's call them ghosts in the machine. And these ghosts can end up repeating the very same injustices these tools were supposed to fix. To really understand what I mean, let's zoom in on one of the most famous and most criticized of these risk assessment tools. It's called Compass, and it's used in courtrooms all across the United States to predict who is likely to be a future criminal. A huge investigation by ProPublica really dug into this tool's error rates. Specifically, they looked at its false positives. Now, that's when the algorithm flags someone as high risk, but they don't actually go on to commit another crime. The results were pretty shocking. The tool was flat out wrong about Black defendants almost 45% of the time. For white defendants, that error rate was just 23.5%. The journalists who did the investigation, they put it bluntly. They found that the formula would, and I'm quoting here, falsely flag Black defendants as future criminals at almost twice the rate as white defendants. I mean, this isn't some small bug in the system. This is a massive, systemic disparity with life-altering consequences for real people. So, how on earth does something like this happen? Well, there are a few key reasons. First, you have biased data. The AI learns from historical crime data, which, let's be real, already reflects decades of biased policing. Second, you get these dangerous feedback loops. The AI predicts crime in a neighborhood, so more police are sent there. More police make more arrests, and that new data proves the AI was right all along. See the cycle?
Third, a lot of these tools are a total black box. They're so complex that even the people who made them can't fully explain how a specific decision was reached. And finally, there's something called automation bias. It's human nature. We tend to just trust what a computer tells us, sometimes even more than our own gut.
And this isn't just theory, you know? The harm is real. There are documented cases where people have been wrongfully arrested, put in jail, based only on a flawed facial recognition match that police just accepted as fact.
Now, the good news here is that these dangers haven't gone totally unnoticed. So, what's being done to fix it? Well, all around the world, lawmakers and advocates are really scrambling to try and build some safeguards.
And the response is coming from all different directions. You've got some cities in the US that have completely banned police from using facial recognition. Over in Europe, the EU is pushing this massive piece of legislation called the AI Act to regulate these high-risk systems. And you're hearing more and more calls for things like mandatory audits and impact assessments before a tool can even be used. But right at the heart of this whole debate is a really fundamental conflict. On one hand, for our justice system to be fair, we need transparency. I mean, you have a right to understand the evidence being used against you. But on the other hand, you have these private companies that build the tools and they protect their algorithms as top secret, valuable intellectual property. So how can you hold an algorithm accountable if you're not even allowed to see how it works?
And that really brings us to the core of the whole issue. We're standing at a crossroads here, with the very definition of what justice even means kind of hanging in the balance.
You know, in the end, this isn't just a debate about who has the better technology. It's a choice. It's a choice about what kind of society we want to live in. It's forcing us to weigh the promise of technological efficiency against the bedrock principles of our legal system. Things like the right to a fair trial and the absolute guarantee of equality before the law. And that leaves us with one final, really critical question to think about. The ideal of justice, right, is that it's blind. It's supposed to be impartial, unbiased. But as we rush to hand over more and more of these life and death decisions to algorithms, we have to ask ourselves, if justice is supposed to be blind, should its tools be a black box?